this is Ellen from the Make Room, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Christmas stocking like this one. And I'm going to tell you what you need first of all. You need a piece of paper, approximately 60 centimetres by 40, something like that. It could be newspaper, wrapping paper, doesn't have to be anything special. And you need some Calico or old sheeting or something for the main part of the stocking, and then a little bit of Christmas fabric. You need ½ metre of Calico, and then you can either use the Christmas fabric for the whole lining, so you need another ½ metre, or you can use an old sheet or some scrap fabric for most of the lining, and then you just need like 20 centimetres of this. But basically it's ½ metre for each for the lining, ½ metre for the outer stocking. And you need a little bit of trim, like a pom-pom trim, very cheap to buy, and a little bit of ribbon and a Christmas bell. And that's it really. So first of all, you need a piece of paper, approximately about 50 centimetres by 60 centimetres at least. You don't have to use dot and cross paper, you just need to know where, in order to draw a right angle really. So if you haven't got dot and cross paper, use a book or something to get your right angle and continue the lines on in order to draw the first rectangle. So the first thing that you do is you draw a rectangle that is 48 centimetres high, by 33 centimetres across. That's 19 inches by 18. And then we're going to plot some horizontal lines onto this rectangle. Okay, so starting from the bottom, the first line is at 37 centimetres from the bottom, or 14.5 inches, and I've labelled this number 1. The second line is at 24 centimetres from the baseline, or 9.5 inches, and I've labelled that number 2. The third line is at 18.5 centimetres, or 7.25 inches, labelled that number 3. The fourth line is 14 centimetres, or 5.5 inches, and I've labelled that number 4. And the fifth line is 11.5 centimetres, or 4.5 inches from the baseline. And I've drawn those right across. And then I'm going to plot 2 vertical lines. From the right side, 1.5 centimetres in, or ½ inch, I've drawn a vertical line. And then from the left side, 10 centimetres in, or 4 inches, I've plotted another line. And so I've got a sort of grid that I'm going to plot out the shape of this Christmas stocking on. So now I'm going to plot these plot points onto the diagram. The first one is on the top line, and it's 9 centimetres, or 3.5 inches from the corner, from the left hand corner, and I've labelled that one A. And the second one is right in the corner of your rectangle, and I've labelled that one M. And then on this line number 1, the first one is 10 centimetres, or 4 inches from the left, and that's B. And the second one is 1.5 centimetres, or ½ inch in from the right, and I've labelled that one L. On line 2, the first one is 7.5, or 3 inches from the left, and the second one is 11.5, or 4.5 inches from the left, and I've labelled those E and C. On the third line, 1.5 centimetres from the left, or ½ inch, I've labelled F. And then the second one is 10 centimetres, or 4 inches in from the left, and I've labelled that one D. On line 4, I've just put a cross on the very edge of the rectangle. On line 5, the edge of the rectangle, and the second one is 1.5 centimetres, or ½ inch in from the right hand side, and I've labelled that H and K. And the bottom line, 10 centimetres or 4 inches in from the left hand side, I've labelled I, and the second one from the right hand side is 10 centimetres or 4 inches, and I've labelled that one J. And so what you've got is these points all marked out on your grid, and then we're just going to join the letters. A to B to C is a straight line, C to D and D to E is a curved line, E to F is a curved line, F to G is a curved line, G to H is straight, H to I is actually, you can use like a 9-inch or 23 centimetre plate to do that one. Just draw around the edge of the plate. And I to J is a straight line, and then I've used the plate again to get to K, straight line to L, straight line to M. And then M to A is the final one, and I've marked that in red. And then you're going to cut that shape out, and you end up with the pattern for your cutting out your fabric. Now, to make a Christmas stocking like this, which is lined all the way through, you will need approximately 1/2 metre or 50 centimetres of fabric and the same of lining. Now, if you don't want to use your patterned fabric all the way through, then I have used a different fabric inside for the lining and just added on a cuff so that I'm not wasting all that pretty patterned fabric. And I'll show you how to do that. I've cut out 2 out of the Calico, that is going to be the outer one, and then I cut 2 out of an old sheet actually on the back, and I did have it cut to the full extent of the pattern. And then all I did was on this line number, this first top line here, I folded it down and then just cut off to leave a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance so that I can join on my cuff. Okay, so just a note that if you are going to do a different cuff and you have a one-way directional fabric, I've actually cut this out upside down so that when it turns over, the cuff is the right way up. Because if you cut it out that way, it will be upside down. So just remember that. And if you're going to cut out the whole lining out of a patterned fabric that has a one-way design, you need to cut it out upside down so that when it's turned over, the right side, the right way up will be the cuff. Okay, so now I'm going to take the pattern off of my fabric. And I've got my 2 pieces of Calico and my 2 pieces of lining and my cuff. The first thing I'm going to do actually is join the cuffs on. So if I put them right sides up like this, I can just flip one over and attach it to the top of one layer of this cuff. Put vertical pins in, you'll be able to sew over those while you do your seam along here. But this one's going to go like that. Make sure the edges are together. And put a few vertical pins in. Where we're actually going to be sewing is however much you left for the seam allowance. I've left 1.5, which will be along there. So you could also pin it along there if you want to, or you can use a marker on your machine to make sure that you do 1.5 centimetres, whichever you find the easiest. So I've got to join those on first, and then if you've cut this, this doesn't really have a side because it's just calico, but if you have cut out fabric that has a definite right and a wrong side, obviously if it's right sides together, this is the time to turn it, if it's the wrong sides are on the inside, you need to turn it around so that you've got the right sides together, because we're going to be machining around the shape, and obviously you want the right side on the inside. So again, the easiest thing is just put some sort of vertical pins pointing towards the seam allowance all the way around, just to hold it so it doesn't move. while you're sewing around the whole of the stocking. And again, you can use a marker on your machine for your seam allowance. If you allow a centimetre seam allowance around here, make a nice size stocking. So either you can put pins like this around to remind you where you're going to be sewing, or you can use a marker on your machine with maybe a piece of washi tape on it to help you sew straight. It's a little bit more difficult around here, so you could even draw a pencil line on if you find that easier at 1 centimetre that you'll be able to follow, especially around the curves. Might help you. A bit like that. Don't forget this is on the wrong side, so you won't be able to see it. Whatever you find easiest in order to sew all around here from the top to the bottom, and you're going to secure it nicely at the tops there. And you're going to do the same to the inner lining. After you've sewn these, you're going to sew it, but this time right sides together, so it will go like this, making sure that the right side of the cuff is on the inside, and you'll be sewing around the whole shape. So here we are at the machine. First of all, I'm going to do the seam allowances for the cuff, and that was at 1.5. So you can use washi tape and put it on your 1.5 marker. So long as your needle is in the middle position, that will be correct. And you can see that when I put the edge of my fabric on, it's in line with my pins. So I take the pin out, I just reverse at the beginning, right the way across, keeping the edge of the fabric on the edge of the washi tape. Just reverse at the end. And I'll just remove the pins and do the same to the other one. And what I need to do next is just press that nice and flat before I join these two together. But I've got this one ready to be sewn around, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So you could move that back to 1 centimetre now, to the 1 centimetre marker, and keep the edge of the fabric on the edge of that tape. Reverse at the top. Around the curve, you're going to be turning your hand, so you're moving it around. It's a little bit harder now to see the edge of the material, so generally speaking it's not far off from the edge of your foot, a centimetre, so you could just use the edge of your foot as a guide, or if you've got a pencil line you can follow that. Just do whatever you find easiest. And then when you get to this point, don't overshoot, just do a few by hand if necessary, because you're going to turn it and go back round to that other shape. Take the pins out. Now you don't want to turn this through straight away. We need to clip where there's curves, otherwise it won't lay flat. So first of all, cut off the point, not your stitching but just above it, and you can pare it away as well a little bit, so there's not too much above your stitching line. And then anywhere where there is a curve, you're going to clip up to the stitching. So around here we're going to clip quite a lot because it's quite a curve. I'm using the ends of my scissors because it means I can't cut further than I want to, but don't do that. Always use the ends of your scissors. And then this is a gentle curve, so I need to clip it a little bit. all around to get it to turn through nicely. And then that's a straight bit, so you don't need to clip that. And then when we get back to the curve again here, clip around there. So the more curved it is, the more clips you're going to put in, basically. And then it's straight there, so that should be fine. And we should find that when we turn this through, it will form a nice shape because we've clipped it all. You can see it's curving nicely around all the shape of the stocking. You can either use a knitting needle or the ends of your scissors to get in and get that point out, gently pushing it out, and then maybe use a pin just to get the final bit out. Now you can sew the little bell and ribbon on at the end, but if you want to, you could put it in at this stage before you've sewn around it. So I've just unpicked a little bit to show you that you could do that. So if I just put the bell through the hole, just make sure the ribbon's straight and just push it down. Just put it in from the other side. Easier. Then I could have just sewn that at the same time, so I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to put it in now, line those two bits of ribbon up, just put a vertical pin in. I'm just going to do that little point again, because then it will just be caught in there and I won't have to sew it on afterwards. I'm just going to go over that point. Just trim off that bit of ribbon. And we'll find that will be nicely caught into the very tip of that toe of that foot, like that, which is kind of cute. Okay, so what I do now is give that a press all the way around. Try and get all this flat if you can. If you've got a sleeve arm to press, then that's the thing to use. If not, do the best that you can so that you've got a nice shape like that. Now, if you're going to add a little bit of trim like this to the edge of your, it's actually caught in between the two layers, as you can see. It would be easier if you apply it before you close the whole of your lining up. So just do a bit of the seam down one side, just so you go past the join where the cuff goes on. Obviously, if you haven't done a separate base for your lining, if the lining's the same all the way through, you just want to do a little bit really, so that this top bit is joined. So I'm just going to join it at the top here. So I'll just stop there. And if you open that up and maybe give it a press, you can apply the trim to the whole top edge then in one go with it flat. And don't forget, it's going to be turned, you know, this was going to be turned under, so it's going to go under like that. So you have to put it on pointing downwards if you like. So if you're going to allow 1 centimetre for the joining, then just move it back 1 centimetre from the edge where you pin it, like that. Pin it along. Like that. And it will probably be helpful if you put a few vertical pins in, because it'll just stop it moving while you take the other pins out. Otherwise you've just got to hold it with your finger, whichever you find easiest. And now you might get away with this foot actually, but you could use your zipper foot for this. Some bobble trims are more pronounced than others, so if it was such that you couldn't do it with this foot, you would definitely need to use your zipper foot. And put it on the side that you need it to be. So if you need it to be cut away that way, then that side, but you can equally put it on the other way if you were working from the other way up, if you like. But I need it on this side, so I'm going to put it there. And then run the bar, this part of the foot, along the edge of the bobbles, and then just move your needle across using the zigzag width dial, which moves your needle when you're in straight stitch. And then you'll get nice and close to the edge of the bobble trim. And you can just sew that all the way along. Probably best to take these vertical pins out when you get to them, because the zipper foot won't like it particularly if you try and go over them. You can on a normal foot, but zipper foot's slightly different. There we go, so that's machined all the way along the top edge. Just trim off the bit I don't need. Okay, so now you can join the rest of your stocking. Just make sure they line up there before you go too far. And it's also a good idea just to make sure those line up as well where you've done that join. You can put pins, just like you did the other one, all the way around. You can draw the shape on if you need to follow a line. Just find the easiest way for you really. Make sure the edges are together. Go back to my other foot. And just remember to return the needle to the central position by just pressing one, or we're putting it back to needle in the middle, which is on your zigzag dial, wherever that is. It could be 5 or it could be 0. I've just pressed 1 and it just returns it to its default position. Now I can sew from the top all the way around like I did the other one. Just using the edge of my foot as a guide this time. Sometimes you might need to lift the foot. So just make sure your needle's down if you do that. Now what you can do with the lining is make the seam allowance a bit bigger so that it's a little bit smaller than the thing that you're putting it into, because obviously it's exactly the same size. It's going to be a little bit scrumpled up, so I've just come away from the edge a bit more now, so it's a little bit smaller. You could do a 1.5cm seam allowance on the lining. Just make sure that at the top where you're going to join it, you go back to the centimetre, otherwise it won't fit with the other top. I've come back to where I joined it already, so I'm just going to put it there. Again, you need to clip it all round just like you did your other one. And then we'll be ready to join them at the top. Okay, so you don't need to turn this one through because it's going to go inside your other one. So put it inside so that you don't get confused about what you're doing now. And just make sure you've got the right edges against the right edges. Now we want to join this at the top, and so it's going to go like that when it's done. So a good way to do it is just to turn it like that physically and then hold that edge so you know you've got the right one, and then just pull it through. Just don't let go of that. Maybe put a pin in there. And then you can pull them out and you can see what you've got to do, where you've got to join it. Because you've got one, you held that and you've got a pin in. So you're just going to go around the top of here. We do have to leave a gap though, because otherwise you can't turn it through. So now you're just going to go around the whole circle. They should fit exactly because you made them out of the same pattern, and left the 1 centimetre seam allowance for both of them at the top. Just going to pin it all round. And then along the other edge I'm going to leave a gap. Now when you leave a gap, it needs to be enough to turn through obviously, but it doesn't have to be that big, I'd say probably about that. So if I put a vertical pin in there, I will remember not to sew that bit. So just going to leave a gap, probably about 8 or 10 centimetres, something like that. And then if you just tuck that in, you can sew around that. Now you might want to take your sleeve arm off for this, might make it easier, and you can tuck one inside the other, and then you can slide it onto your sleeve arm. Now again, we're sewing up to that pom-pom trim, so I'm going to use my zipper foot again. Put it on the outside. Put it along the edge of the trim, and then I'm just going to move my needle using the zigzag dial as close as I can to the pom-poms. I can feel those with my fingers, so I know I'm in the right place. Just go all the way around the top, feeling that you're close to that pom-pom trim. And then you're going to turn this through. Now I'll just grab the lining, probably pull that through easy. And actually if I can grab that bell, I'm just going to pull it through like this. And you can see you've just got a little gap that we're going to sew up, probably by hand, it's the easiest thing. But first of all I'm just going to tuck my lining down into my foot of my stocking, making sure the point's in the point. Now I'm just going to go and give it a little press. So here's my gap, I've given it a press so it's looking nice and flat. I'm just going to put a pin in there to butt it up next to the pom-pom trim. And I'm just going to close that up by hand. Just find the opening where it comes to, put your thread through to the beginning of the gap, let it disappear, and then just do a couple of small stitches to fasten on. That's nice and strong, and then you can slide through the channel at the top and then into the trim, and that will just pull that up to the top edge again. And then just do a couple of stitches to fasten off, put it through the material somewhere in between the layers and just cut it off. That's nice and finished off, and then you're going to turn your cuff over, as you can see, looking very nice, and then we're just going to give that a press. I haven't turned it quite to the top so you don't see the whole of the, you don't see the start of the lining, so probably just like that. So just give that a press. Now all we've got left to do is add a little hanging piece of ribbon. I just make it as long as I want, add a bit extra, fold it over onto itself like that, making sure that the raw edge is at the back. Find where you want to hang it, which will be at the back of the stocking, put it in there, put a vertical pin, but just through the upper layers so that you can pull that out, and then you'll be able to sew across that a few times. Return my needle to the middle again. And I'm just going to slide it in. Remember, you can lift your pressure foot up if you need to get into anything thick. And I'm just going to machine across it, maybe take that pin out when I've got my foot on it, and reverse that. And then maybe just a little bit further up as well, I'm just going to do it. So I'm just going to move my needle up, move it up a bit, do it again. Trim off any ends. And there you have your finished Christmas stocking with a very nice tinkly bell on it. Finished article. I hope you've enjoyed making a Christmas stocking with me today, and hope you have fun.